Hey everybody, my name is Yyanthire. So in the last one we left off with an overhaul to the home. As you can see here, I went ahead and did the full overhaul to it. So now there's just this open spellbook button. You go ahead and click it. We're greeted with a different type of spellbook. So as you can see here, it's pretty much just like the same one. It was actually all hooked in roughly already, so I was just doing a lot of programming in order to just incorporate everything together and just make sure everything kind of flows smoothly. But let's go ahead and take a look at the setup for it. So it's basically just like the regular spellbook, but instead of having to drag spells to your hotbar, you can just cast them directly through here. So let's go ahead and want to look at both of these. So as you can see, we have the Spawn Disciple spell, and we have this little activate spell button down here that is grayed out. If I were to click this again, we got a little pop-up message. So if you don't have the ability to activate the spell for whatever reason, you're going to get a little toast message. It just says, oh, this is the reason why you can't do it. So in this case, we don't have enough supply. If I were to go ahead and give myself some supplies, now we have 30 supply, and then go ahead and click this again. As you can see, we didn't get the error message, and we are now able to activate the spell. So let me go ahead and move this a little bit. So you can kind of see down here when I press activate, we go ahead and get a little spell effect, and then we of course get our new unit spawned. And the same thing goes for any of the other spells. So the only other spell right now for the home is of course the unlock advance to apprentice. In this particular instance, it said we didn't have enough resources. Now we do. Click it again. It says we're missing the Tome of Apprenticeship. Let me go ahead and grab that real quick. Okay, so now we do have it. So let's go ahead and reopen the spellbook. Click here. Click research upgrades, and now we can go ahead and actually activate this. So now we have the ability to advance to apprentice, as you can see through here. So with all that being said, there are going to be additional spells for the home to get. Not currently, so we don't need to worry about them yet, but that should complete the new setup for all the structures. So through the home, there's actually going to be the ability to summon additional structures. So back in the 2D version of the game, you could have a bunch of different structures just sort of around wherever you like and set up your base. In this updated version, I don't think it matters too much about being able to kind of construct your own base. I was just going to have the home most likely just spawn them around you somewhere. And so you can have a bunch of different structures, and each of these structures have different abilities and spells and such, so mostly research related. So you can go ahead and upgrade your army, make your army stronger, upgrade your resources, you know, etc., etc. If you played the classic version, you kind of get the idea of what will be happening. And for each of these structures, they're of course going to have their own little spell book to go ahead and open. I might actually want to change it so that instead of having this home be activatable and you can just teleport to it, I don't see that as being the most useful given the fact that we're just on the home base map. So you're basically just like, if you want to go back to the tutorial map, you can go down here, and then over here is where the next map is going to be. I don't see that as particularly useful. So you know, I might just make it so that you can just click this and then it'll open the spellbook. However, I think this open spellbook button is just so much more obvious that I feel like it's just something we should probably keep. Just because any new player that sees it is going to say, oh hey, open spellbook, click it. And then they're going to be greeted essentially with all of this. And I feel like that's a lot more user intuitive, even though it doesn't look as cool as just like being able to click the home. So I'll leave it alone for now. Of course, these spellbooks are also disjoint, so if I were to click this spellbook button, it'll open the normal spellbook. Click it again, it kind of goes away, and it sort of just got rid of the structure spellbook as well. So various coding elements, but this is all an excellent step in the right direction. So there's a few directions I'd like to go in. The next biggest and essentially the most important part of the coming update is the next map. So this home base map is cool and all, however, I definitely want to make the next map that much more special, just like the first map was the demo map. It's essentially the next part of the game, so it's going to be very important to include that. In addition, there are some various cleanup things I need to do just to make future editions that much easier to add. I definitely need to make a world map at some point. The world map can kind of come whenever, since it's not that critical to have it yet, but in the future it's going to be very important to have. With the world map, there of course should be a Homeport. So back in the classic version of the game, there's a spell called Homeport that you can just put on your hotbar and cast away, and that would just teleport you back to your home base. We're not going to have that in this one. I think that's not as intuitive as I would like. I think I want to overhaul this little button right here in the main map viewer. So you just click it, and it'll just teleport you back to this home base and spawn all your units right here, next to your home. Finally, there's definitely a desire for multiple save files. So in pretty much normal games, on Steam in particular, there's Steam Cloud Save. And so what that allows you to do is be able to switch between any sort of console, all of your save files very conveniently. So that's definitely something I need to look into. But for now, the main thing about save files is I want to have more than one active at any time, because right now it's just a single save file. And while at the current point in time, just doing a single playthrough is fine, I imagine in the future players are going to be able to want to do multiple saves. So being able to incorporate that as early as I can would be very ideal. Lastly, there's the storyline element. So I haven't really touched on that much at all. In fact, the game itself hasn't done anything with story. I do know that the main precursor to story was actually being able to get this second map hooked up, which was done in the last blog. So with that, I should be able to begin setting up some storyline elements and start to incorporate that. I really need to think of what I want to do for cutscenes and in-game cutscenes and how I want to do those, because those are going to be fairly complicated. I think for now I can get all of the major coding elements out of the way first, just so that I have pretty much a clean slate, so I can go in, write the story, and then it'll just tie into the base game already. Probably incorporate some additional bits of lore and storyline in the existing maps, but that'll come at probably a later time. Finally, there's a potential for a little bit of rebalancing. I know in the beginning part of the game, everything, while the difficulty curve was how I liked it, I felt like things could get a little bit tedious and take a little bit longer than I would like. So I might do a little bit of rebalancing just in order to make it so that playing the game for the first time is a little bit more relaxed, not in the sense of like making it easy going or making it a easy introduction. It's definitely still going to be a challenging game. However, removing a lot of the tedious elements and a lot of the annoying elements are really a big desire of mine, since I'm definitely not someone that would like to deal with a lot of obnoxious elements in a game. So we'll see how that goes, but I have some ideas for that as well. Alright, so really quick before I get into the rebalancing, I just want to say that I actually made the fog part of the map now alongside the music, so that in the future when I have new maps I can be able to change this color instead of it being this reddish, brownish kind of color. I can have different kind of colors, so that'll be pretty cool, but nothing about that yet. We're still going to be keeping the same color as it is and same kind of themes. Anyways, back to rebalancing. So I went ahead and made the game a little bit easier and a little bit less tedious. So let's start off with the changes right here. First, on the Disciple, the base health is now 200. If you remember with the Apprentice is going to have 500, 500. But with the Disciple, I want to make it just a little bit less obnoxious when you are under tons of fire from different spells. So 200 health seems pretty good, and then I was always noticing that I was running out of mana, and I think that's kind of a little bit annoying for new players, especially since they want to cast all of their spells. So I upped it to 200 mana. I think that should be pretty good. In addition to that, I went ahead and on the Mystic Bolt increased the damage from 5 to now 10. So double damage. I noticed all the enemies really just have like lots of health, so I think that's kind of a welcome change. And then the same thing goes for Lesser Fireball. This one was previously 3 times the damage value of Mystic Bolt. I changed it now to about like 2.5 is whatever this math works out to, but 24 damage up from 14. So it's still a really strong spell. It's really quick to cast, but just a little bit extra damage. So it'll kind of get you through a lot more stuff. It'll also kind of help you in general with like cutting down foliage, etc. So jumping into the world, we can actually go ahead and check all of these out. Let's go ahead and fight an enemy. So we're coming up to an enemy. So previously it would take a handful of hits. Now you can go ahead and just cast Mystic Bolt on them. You can also just kind of stand still and start to cast, but really I want players to still understand the fact that they need to start moving when they're attacking. As you can see, we're already at pretty low health comparatively, but now the Fire Oracle is just going to get killed in about 3 hits, so we can kill him pretty quickly. Not too bad for a single unit, at least. When you get to triple units, it's going to get a lot more damage output, but for the most part, it's pretty good. So we can come up here and cast a Fireball on these guys, and they're already down to 20% health, and you can go ahead and just cast another Mystic Bolt and kill them. So I didn't change any of the fire coals damage, I just increased the damage output of this cycle, and I think that's a lot more acceptable. Let's actually go ahead and we're going to make our way to the Metastas. Alright, just making my way up now. The additional health is going to make it a lot easier to be able to deal with these Metastas. So I went ahead and dropped their HP down quite a bit, especially given the fact that the Mystic Bolt now deals bonus damage. They're got a pretty significant nerf. I felt like they always just had tons of health previously, and while it's kind of easy to just kind of run in here, let them start to cast, and then run away, and let them kill themselves, most new players are going to not know about that little strategy. So we can go ahead and cast some fireballs on them as well, and it deals tons of health, so you can pretty much kill them in a single volley of 3 fireballs, or you can put in 2 fireballs and a Mystic Bolt. But it might be easiest just to press the fireball with all your 3 of your units and just take them out even faster than before. So the last balance change was actually with Baron. So with Baron, we don't really need to jump over to Baron to talk about it. With Baron, I wanted to keep him the same, so I went ahead and just reduced his resistance values. I noticed there was also a bug with my resistances, so I was able to correct that. Mathematically, of course. But I wanted to keep the Baron fight the same, especially with the 3 units. I just noticed that you just destroy Baron so fast and it's not as fun of a fight. So that should complete the balance adjustments, and now from here we can actually go ahead and move forward and go on to the home base map. And with the home base map we can actually start to make our way forward to the 3rd map. So let's go ahead and get to the heart of the video. So as you can see over here, I set up the next passageway. You can see this is where we came from. Here's the home base. And we're going to come down here and we're going to find the next way forward. So let me go ahead and I'll hook this up and we'll go ahead and assign it to a new map. And we'll kind of go from there. Alright, so initial testing works. We're over here in a new map. So let me go ahead and actually go ahead and start to block everything out. So I just finished blocking out the next map, as you can see here. Here's where we're going to spawn the player in at. So this is immediately after the home base. Kind of come up through here. And then there's basically going to be greeted with a bunch of wide open areas and a lot of different pathways to go. I'll definitely be working on trying to get some creative level design just to make this a little more interesting to explore. Definitely going to have some new enemies and then some new bosses and some other different types of new level design type stuff. Like I had a concept for a frozen plant that you can only destroy with fire spells, so stuff like that. I'll just be playing around with it. We'll of course be getting into upgrading the apprentice into having more spells, but that'll come up much later. For now, the level design idea is currently you spawn in about right here, you kind of come up through here, get a whole bunch of stuff to explore, and then down here in the bottom right there's going to be a passageway to another map, and then there's going to be a passageway right here, and another passageway right here. So there's going to be 3 new maps that come after this one, but for right now we'll just be working on this map. All of the level design's kind of blocked out. I'd like to kind of check it out in game, but I know I'm going to need to do a little more trimming, a little bit more smoothing everything out. Everything's just kind of like thrown together, and you can see like there's huge cliffs and stuff like that, and stuff that I just don't like that I'll be smoothing out. But this is the idea. Let's go ahead and jump in game and let's just kind of take a quick look and just see how open it is and all that kind of stuff. Alright, so I played around with it a little bit. The openness and spacing of the map I'm liking quite a bit. I think it's just open enough so that moving 3 units around through here is pretty good. As you can see, a lot more room than in the original maps. Kind of run around a little bit more, but a nice open area over here. This is, of course, the starting point. You kind of run around to all the different spots. I really want to start to make the maps a little bit more open, just so you have a lot more room to control your 3 units. I noticed in the Twin Metasta lair in the original map that it would just really start to get just too congested when everything just gets too close together. But for this one, a lot more openness. I'm definitely going to be removing a lot of these giant hills. These are just kind of for blocking. I want to make it more like you're in a deep forest, just like how the home base was a little bit, but probably a little bit more. A little bit less hills, a little bit more forest. I like that idea a little bit better. But nice open area, very easy to move around. I'm gonna have tons of various enemies over here for you to fight. Definitely more enemies than in the previous maps. I like the idea of fighting huge groups of mobs with your 3 units, since it is an AoE damage based game, so you can kill mobs in groups more easily. And also, you have 3 units to control. So I'm going to go ahead and start to decorate the map and start to make it look a lot nicer than just this. So let's go ahead and play around with that, and then I'll show you guys what I get. Alright, so the map direction's looking pretty good so far. A nice blend of open areas into some more closed off areas, but then back into much more open areas. So that's the direction I want to go for with this map. You do have 3 units to control, and everything about the map I want it to be more opened up, but also still have some areas that are a little bit closed off, so that we can kind of have that dynamic, so it's not just one giant open map. So I think this is going to be a good direction. I still got a little bit of work to do on the map, but for the most part, the gameplay direction seems pretty good to me. So I just finished setting up a new feature. This is the same feature that was in the 2D version of the game. This is the Homeport ability. So this has been tied now to this little home icon. So in the tutorial map, and then of course in this home base map, if you were to just click this, it'll go ahead and jump your camera right on top of the home. However, when we go ahead and exit this map and go into one of the regular maps, so all the maps going forward from this point on, let's go ahead and transition there real quick. So here we are in the next map. So if I go ahead and open up this and then click the home, it'll say, do you want to travel home? We say traverse. Wait for it to transition back. And here we are. So we went ahead and spawned back in right next to the home. So this is kind of how I want it. You'll be able to press the home port button, teleport back home from anywhere you are in the map, and then go ahead and access the home and do whatever you needed to do back here. So I think that'll be as good of a feature as it was back in the 2D version. However, of course, there's going to be a need for probably ways to teleport back. But I'll think of those going forward. For right now, this should be sufficient and give players a lot of movement and a lot of ability to get back and forth conveniently. Alright, so with the addition of the home base map and of course the next map after that, the defeat logic needed to be reworked. So I did a little bit of an adjustments to it. So when you go ahead and die, we'll go ahead and say you have been defeated, returning home. I'll just teleport your camera back home, spawn you a new unit. And now when we go ahead and enter into the next map, since there is no home in the next map, I'll go ahead and show you guys what happens. Let me go ahead and get there. And here we are in the next map. So when you go ahead and die, you get the same message, and then I'll go ahead and just transition you back to the home base. And here we are. It was pretty much identical to home porting, but that's the new defeat logic. So if you die out in the world, you'll just go ahead and spawn back here in the home base map. Otherwise, if you're on the home base itself, or you're back on the tutorial map, so the initial map, it'll just spawn you next to the home, and you'll be able to just continue as normal. I think that's a lot better of a design, because it'll give new players the ability to just basically keep going. But going forward, I want the player to basically think more about their units and think about more of their units' life and longevity. So if they lose one, they're going to have to go all the way back to the home just to be able to get a new one. So I think that should be alright. So with the creation of the new map, I'm going to go ahead and design a bunch of new units for this new map. So a bunch of new enemies to play around with. This first starting one is actually going to be the Disciple Dragon. So similar to the Apprentice Dragon Baron that you fought, this is a weakened version of him. A little bit, pretty much yours is casting the same spell. However, this spell has been a little bit weakened, so it's a little bit of a closer range spell, but still tons of damage to it. So it's still a very deadly opponent. And then we kind of quickly just go through all of the new units, give you a brief rundown of all of them. And next up is the Water Archwhirl. This is going to be the first healing enemy in the game. So as soon as this enemy takes damage, it's going to go ahead and, as you can see, it's going to be healing itself, but in normal circumstances it'll be healing other enemy units. Next up is actually the Frosteris plant. So this is going to be a new resource in the game. And what's unique about this one is the fact that it's completely immune to all elemental types except for fire. So you won't be able to damage it unless you cast fire spells on it. I think I gave it kind of a cool little unique effect with its frost effect, but as you can see, cast spells on it, it'll go ahead and take some damage. And got a nice little death animation with, of course, you getting 1 water for defeating it. So as part of the game design behind this one's actually going to be blocking off some areas just to kind of teach the player a little bit more about elemental affiliation with their spells, so that they don't just jump into a fight with an enemy and not realize that elements are a thing and start to kind of get destroyed by them. So in line with the previous resource, this is actually going to be the Water Nymph plant. So this plant is actually immune to everything except for air and earth. which is going to be a very interesting design because currently the player doesn't really have any way to deal earth or air damage, but going forward, as I'll explain later, the player is actually going to unlock a way to do so. So with this, when you defeat this plant, it'll actually give you 3 water resources, and in line with the previous, the Frosteris plant, this one is actually going to be blocking off certain areas just to kind of direct the player a little bit more so that the player does not start wandering off until they've actually unlocked the spell to be able to destroy this, and then they can progress with the game. So as you can see, it has a cool little water effect to it, a little bit of water on the ground effect, and then it looks like it's kind of raining on it, so I think it turned out quite well. Next up is a special one, the fountain. So this is a previous one from the 2D version of the game, and this new fountain is actually going to be providing additional health and mana regeneration. So as you can see, we're regenerating some health and mana right now. You want to get closer, I just start to kick up a lot more, so you'll be able to regenerate much more quickly. You can actually defeat this fountain and it'll be basically gone permanently, but it will heal enemies as well, so it'll be kind of a give or take if you want to destroy it. If it's healing some enemies, you may need to kill it off so that you can fight the enemies better, but it'll be a game design kind of thing, so I think it turned out a little cool of a little effect here that's going on. That shall be the fountain, so let's go ahead and hop into the next one. And next up is the Blighted Flower. So this was called the Poisonous Plant in the 2D version of the game. This is going to summon a cloud of poison that you can actually destroy if you attack it. But as anything gets into it, most likely the player unit gets into it, they'll actually be poisoned and then start to take a bunch of damage. So as you can see, I'm taking quite a bit of damage already. And exiting. Slowly, the poison drains off the unit, so you don't have to worry about it. But as you can see, the cloud is losing health, and once it's dead, it's gone. But the plant's just going to summon another round of poison. So I imagine this will be a kind of a cool little thing to zone off the player from going certain areas without destroying this plant first. It's also worth mentioning that this flower does have negative 200% fire resistance, so you'll be dealing tons of damage to it if you cast fire spells on it. So that's going to be the recommended way for defeating this type of enemy. And finally, a mini-boss. This is Aronaya, the Disciple Dragon. So as you can see, Aronaya is yellow in color, and she will actually begin to cast normal Draconic Fireball spells, similar to the regular Disciple Dragon, but every about 10 seconds or so, Aronaya is actually going to cast a Lightning Bolt. So as you can see, she's about to cast it here in a second. It has a nice yellow glow, and then you get hit by lightning. Deals tons of damage. So not something you want to get hit by, but I think this will be a fun enemy. The main design premise behind the Lightning Bolt is the fact that it'll pick right where you were just standing and then cast, but it casts extremely quick, so you'll need to be basically moving around constantly in order to avoid the Lightning Bolt spell, since it basically hits you instantly and doesn't have any kind of travel time or anything like that. But going on back to the previous plant, so the plant that couldn't be destroyed, the Water Nymph plant, it requires air elemental attacks in order to defeat it, and by defeating Aronaya, that's how you get the Lightning Bolt spell. This is of course going to be locked on the Apprentice only, so you'll have to advance beyond Disciple into Apprentice, but I imagine the player is going to be able to quickly get up to Apprentice status if they aren't already by the second map, so I think that'll be good. Beyond this, I'll definitely need to be making the Apprentice, and on top of that, making the Apprentice's new spells. So that'll be in the works coming up pretty much next. And then on top of that, to finish off this vlog, I'll have to be doing some level design. Alright, so here we are. I just finished creating a bunch of new spells for the Apprentice. In addition, I also worked up a new, or technically old feature from the 2D version and brought it back into the 3D version. I think it's going to be very helpful, and we'll see it here in a little bit. So let's go ahead and pop open the Apprentice's spells, and we'll start to take a look at all of them. Alright, so coming up first is going to be the Elite Bolt. So this was actually in the 2D version of the game. This is basically a lightning bolt that strikes with true damage, so a new elemental type. There's going to be a bunch of new elemental types for the user to play around with coming up, but all of these spells, I should probably mention, are going to be locked, so the player either has to unlock them through the home, or some of them are going to be found out in the world, such as one of the future ones, the Lightning Bolt spell. So let's go ahead and we'll drag the Elite Bolt down to the hut. Alright, so the Elite Bolt is going to be a Truth Lightning Bolt, so let's go ahead and cast it and just kind of take a look. So as you can see, it's going to be a small AoE spell, pretty decently long range. As you can see, it starts to cut off at about there. So pretty pretty good range, so I can't hit these resources from here, but let's go ahead and cast it and let you see the effect. So a fairly quick to cast spell. It's got a long range, and as you can see up here, here's one of the features from the original. So this is the cooldown for that spell. So a lot of these spells are going to have cooldowns, but not all of them. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next spell. I should actually quickly mention that the Elite Bolt is going to be the only one that the apprentice immediately starts out with. All of the rest of them are going to need to be unlocked. Alright, so next up is actually going to be a new healing spell. This is Healing Mysticism. So this is basically just an upgrade of the regular Lesser Heal spell. Let's go ahead and drag it to the hotbar. As you can see, it's got a pretty good AoE. It's got much more range, which is going to be fairly excellent. But the main drawback is, of course, its cast speed. Not as fast as the other one, but a pretty good new spell all around, so definitely an upgrade for your healing. It heals 55 HP, which the apprentices have 500 right now, so it's going to heal you up a lot more quickly. As you saw above as well, it does indeed have a cooldown, so it's not going to outright replace Lesser Heal. You'll be able to kind of spam this spell 3 times and heal about 150 plus HP, and then you'll have to use Lesser Heal for the rest of your healing if you need it. And on to the next spell. So this is actually going to be an upgrade to the Lesser Fireball. This is now the Empowered Fireball. Works essentially the same as the Lesser Fireball. This is still an all-cast ability. More range than before. Previously the range was about here. Now it's much further out, but still not super long. And it just deals a bunch of damage in AoE. So you'll still need to worry about accidentally dealing friendly fire, but it's a giant fireball spell for good AoE, so use it as you see fit. And it has a not too long of a cast time, but equally as importantly, it does not have a cooldown, so you can just keep casting it. This is meant to be more of a replacement for the Lesser Fireball, but it's your choice. Do you want to continue using both? This one definitely has a significantly higher mana cost, so that's something to keep in mind. Alright, so now on to the Lightning Bolt spell. So this is one that's going to be unlocked through Aranaya. This spell has an extremely long range. In fact, I'm actually going to run all the way over here to this corner just to show it off. As you can see, it just keeps going and going and going, and it actually goes to the point where you can actually hit these resources from all the way back here. So extremely long range spell. I want it to be kind of like a long range casting kind of spell, so that you have kind of like the sniper kind of character. Let's go ahead and cast. I'll actually come over here so you can see the effect. It's very slow to cast, so you'll need to be wary of that, and it does have a long cooldown. But there it is. Huge attack. It is worth mentioning that since these are on fog, they don't get updated, but as soon as you walk over here, they're dead. So Entangle is going to be the first utility skill. The utility for this is actually going to be that it can root your opponents. So as you can see, let's go ahead and we can just cast it on our own character. So we can move around freely, but as soon as we get rooted, we won't be able to move at all. So let's go ahead and we'll just cast it on ourselves. Fairly slow to cast. And here we go, we're already rooted. As you can see, a status effect pops up showing, and we couldn't move at all during that time. The range is fairly acceptable. Nothing amazing, but nothing bad either. So next up is a pretty important spell. This is the Greater Mystic Bolt. So in the original 2D version of the game, this spell was a single target, high damage spell, and it's pretty much retained that. As you can see, it has a fairly small AoE, not as small as the Lightning Bolt or the Elite Bolt, but still very small. And the range itself, a decent enough range, but the main feature of it is its massive damage. So as you can see here, we have about 500 on our unit. Might as well just cast it on ourselves. All of these spells, it's worth mentioning, do have friendly fire enabled, so you need to be real careful with them. It deals just tons of damage. In this case, it dealt 102 damage, so very powerful spell. Definitely going to be your #1 single target ability, especially given its cooldown. So you're probably going to be wanting to have this pretty much off cooldown at all times and just keep casting it. It has a huge mana cost to compensate for this, so something to be aware of. Next up is another utility skill. This is Conjure Poison Cloud. So what this is going to do is actually enable you to be able to summon just a big poisonous cloud, similar to the Blighted Flower enemy that's going to be new in the new map. So as you can see, it has a pretty good range to it, and when I go ahead and summon it, go ahead and get close so you can see the effect. shoots off the spell, and then just a big cloud of poison comes up. And as you can see here, if you get into it, you will definitely get poisoned as well, so something to be aware of. Friendly fire is going to be something that's probably going to be a staple for the game going forward, so definitely something to keep in the back of your mind. And lastly, a new healing spell. So there's going to be 2 new healing spells. This one is Conjure Rain. This is of course a water spell, and when I go ahead and pop it up, it has a massive AoE. When I go ahead and cast it, it has a pretty decent cast time. Nothing too quick, but nothing too slow. And anything standing in this, essentially standing in the rain right here, is going to get a regenerate health status effect. So bonus healing, but also need to keep in mind the fact that this will heal enemies as well. So this might not be something that you want to use in the enemies or while fighting enemies, but it might be something where you want to throw it in the background. So those are all the new spells. I'll still need to be working on getting the actual mechanisms that unlock these spells, but for the time being, this was just a demonstration of them. Going forward, I'll need to be creating the next map. So the next map has been created, but all of the level design and enemy design hasn't been put in place. Just the environment's been carved out. So I'll be working on that next, in addition to setting up the unlock system so that you can actually buy these from the home or unlock them through fighting some of the enemies, such as the Lesser Lightning Bolt gets unlocked through fighting Yyanthire. Alright, so here we are. So I went ahead and set up everything in the map, so all of the nature and all of the enemies, and of course the mini-boss Yyanthire. So let's go ahead and kind of go through all of the highlights. So you start down here, and of course in the top left up here, and these 2 spots are going to be passageways going forward, and this bottom right is also going to be a passageway. So let's kind of scroll in here. As you can see, so as soon as you start off right about here, you come up through here, you're immediately greeted with the next new enemy, the Disciple Dragon. And then through here you got a few more enemies, a bunch of shrubberies everywhere, which is plants and stuff just kind of blocking your path, so you kind of got to destroy it or kind of run around it. Nice little fountain right here, kind of healing these enemies, so you probably want to kill off this fountain and then fight these enemies. Various things blocking, so I know I have some Anguish Incarnates around here, and then of course a new enemy, the Blighted Flower. This one just summons a big cloud of poison, so it makes it a little bit hard to run through. Coming up through here, we got some more Disciple Dragons, Water Coils, a bunch of various more enemies, more Blighted Flowers. And then of course if you end up destroying this one, which is actually kind of recommended, you can come over here, kill some more resources and acquire some more resources, and then of course there's a fountain right here for you. So this map's going to have plenty of fountains just to kind of heal up your units in between fights, make it a little bit more convenient. So going forward, we're actually going to ignore the main paths going to the left and to the right for now. We're going to come up through here. As you can see here, a few more enemies to fight, just kind of more practice fighting these Disciple Dragons, various other things blocking your path, some enemies, etc. Going up through here, another fountain, and more enemies, and then another roadblock. So there's going to be essentially three main sections of the map. So there's the middle section that you start in at. The left section has these Frosteris plants. So these Frosteris plants require fire in order to destroy, so you just have to cast Lesser Fireball on them. Or if you've upgraded to the Empowered Fireball, you can just cast that. And then the right side is going to be blocked off with the Water Nymph plants. And these plants, of course, require either air or earth to destroy, and I'll talk about that a little bit more a little bit later. But let's go ahead and we'll head down the left path, because this is the only accessible path currently. The player technically doesn't have any air or earth spells at this moment, so they can't go down the right path. And then let's go through the left path. A few more enemies, a few more things blocking your path, various water arc coils and whatnot, Blighted Flower, etc. Just more enemies to fight. And then coming up through here, next major point, is the Yyanthire boss fight area. So here's where Yyanthire is stationed, juxtaposed with 3 Disciple Dragons, various other enemies, water arc coils, etc. As soon as you defeat Yyanthire, you can now go ahead and, well, you will receive the Lesser Lightning Bolt spell. So now you have an air spell, you can go ahead and actually start to destroy these water nymphs. And as you can see down here, as soon as you destroy these water nymphs, you get access to this fountain, so you can heal up. And then coming up through here, simple little area, you can either go left, fight a bunch of enemies, come up through here, or you can go right, and you have to kind of charge your way through this area, or kill off all the little Blighted Flowers, because they're just going to be spewing poison everywhere. And I put some Anguish Incarnates in here too, just for a little bit of flavor. And then coming up through here, that's essentially the left part of the area done. So you'll either be taking this passageway or that passageway. There's just going to be some various passageways forward. I haven't planned out those maps yet, so we'll get to those when we get to those, but for right now this is just ideas for going forward. So with that air spell unlocked through Yyanthire, you now have the ability to destroy these water nymphs, which means you can access the right side. So I did mention that there is access to an earth spell as well. So in the home, the poisonous cloud spell, what it does is it summons essentially a cloud of poison. We saw it a little bit earlier, and that poison deals earth damage. So you can actually technically unlock the apprentice spell for poison cloud and then cast it on these water nymphs and be able to progress forward to the right side, should you so desire. I kind of want to give the player a little bit of a choice, so they can either choose, go defeat Yyanthire, unlock the free spell, or if they want to, unlock the poisonous cloud spell and be able to traverse the right side immediately. So it's kind of all up to the player and up to their own creativity. But going forward up the right side, you're immediately in another fight. So 4 disciple dragons and some other various enemies. And then kind of going through here, kind of a similar thing. So there's some blighted flowers on this far left side. There's some tornadoes in this middle side with a lesser Matasta in the back. And then of course this entire side is just blocked out with shrubberies that you can destroy. So you kind of you gotta pick your own path and go forward. And then whichever path you choose, you of course get rewarded with a lesser fountain, some miscellaneous enemies to kill around here, up and through here, just various enemies everywhere, all the way through here. A bunch of shrubberies over here to destroy. If you come down here, more enemies to fight, another fountain, and then a big group of 3 disciple dragons. And then up here is just a big group of enemies, and then coming right down here, this is going to be the way forward. So this is going to be the main way forward. The other 2 ways were just going to be essentially optional areas, but this place right here, going down to the bottom right, this is the main storyline way forward. So that's the main concept behind the map. So without further ado, I think the best thing to do here is now to actually end off this episode. So I thank you for watching. In the next one, I'm actually going to start to test out and play around with this map and just kind of see how it's playing, see if it's enjoyable, see what needs changing and whatnot, and we'll go from there. Alright, until the next one, you guys take care.